This is Crystal Anderson, a 30-year-old mother of four who would vanish without a trace on August 20th, 2022. Not long after her death, her boyfriend's car would be discovered torched in a remote wooded area just days later. But Crystal's body has never been found.
Is now another year that, the kids don't have her around.
But before Crystal met her presumed death, let me take you back to where it all began, and we'll uncover the warning signs that could have saved her life. Crystal was everything you'd want in a friend and mother. Standing at just 5 feet 1 inch tall and weighing only 105 pounds, this dedicated home health aide had naturally green eyes that people remembered long after meeting her. She worked tirelessly, caring for others during the day, then came home to care for her 4 children. Family members described her as someone who never went a day without checking in, always making sure everyone knew she was okay and that her kids were her entire world. But behind the social media posts and the smiling photos, Crystal was living a nightmare that her family had been warning her about for years.
I can't hide it any longer. I'm so sad within myself. I feel so hopeless. Lord, please wrap your arms around me.
Crystal's 4 children had just started the 2022 school year when investigators believe her longtime boyfriend, Tony Berry, kidnapped her.
She was trapped in a relationship with Tony Lee Berry, a 48-year-old man who was the father of her youngest child, 7-year-old Serenity. According to reports from her mother, Wanda Sumpter, the relationship was marked by violence and control. This wasn't a healthy partnership where 2 people lifted each other up. It was one where one person held all the power, and that person was Tony Berry. Crystal had recently made what should have been a positive step forward in her life. She had moved to live independently in Wagoner, South Carolina, hoping to create a safer environment for herself and her children on Cyvern Road. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to break free from the cycle of abuse that had defined so much of her adult life. But as we'll see, leaving an abusive relationship is often the most dangerous time for victims, and Crystal's story tragically proves that point. Her daily routine was predictable and comforting to those who loved her. She'd work her shifts as a home health aide, often seen in her scrubs heading to and from work. She'd call her sister Shadira Smothers regularly, checking in on family members and making plans. Crystal was present in her children's lives in ways that mattered, helping with homework, attending school events, and making sure they felt loved and supported. The relationship with Tony Berry had been rocky for as long as anyone could remember. Family members had witnessed the controlling behavior, the arguments that escalated beyond normal disagreements, and the physical altercations that left emotional and sometimes visible scars.
I remember going into her house last year when this happened, and she had all of these happy back to school notes on the refrigerator and telling the children that she loved them.
She's a 30-year-old beautiful young lady with 4 children. She was one of our TikTokers, so we got to keep her in our prayers.
Berry's pattern of abuse wasn't subtle to those paying attention, but like many victims, Crystal likely felt trapped by circumstances, including their shared child, financial dependence, and the complex emotional manipulation that comes with domestic violence. August 20th, 2022 started like any other day for Crystal. She had been at work, doing her job, caring for others in her community. Crystal came home that evening, still wearing her scrubs, tired from a long shift, but ready to be with her children. What happened next would change everything for her family and set off a chain of events that continues to haunt them more than 3 years later. Witnesses, including one of Anderson's children, saw something that night that no child should ever have to see. There was a verbal fight between Crystal and Tony Berry that quickly escalated beyond words. The argument grew louder, more aggressive, and then it turned physical. And in a moment that would become the last confirmed sighting of Crystal Anderson alive, witnesses saw Tony Berry force her into the trunk of his 2007 Cadillac CTS. The screams from inside the home mixed with the sounds of a struggle, creating a scene of absolute terror. Within hours of that incident, Tony Berry's Cadillac was found in a wooded area of Newberry County, approximately 56 miles away from Crystal's home. The car wasn't just abandoned, it was completely torched, burned to destroy evidence of whatever had happened inside. Cell phone records would later place Barry in the vicinity during the time the car was burning, creating a digital footprint that investigators would use to build their case against him. But where was Crystal?
Not pick someone up from a burning car and have no questions, because I'm never going to give someone a ride that just set a vehicle on fire.
The days immediately following Crystal's disappearance revealed a pattern of behavior that would become central to understanding this case. On August 21st, Crystal failed to pick up one of her children as she had scheduled. For a mother as devoted as Crystal, someone who never missed commitments with her kids, this was the first major red flag that something was seriously wrong. Her sister, Shadira, knew immediately that something terrible had happened. On August 23rd, she contacted Tony Berry directly, demanding to know where Crystal was. Berry's response would become one of many suspicious statements he'd make in the coming weeks. He claimed he hadn't seen Anderson since 1 o'clock in the morning on August 20th, a timeline that contradicted what witnesses had seen just hours later. Shadira didn't wait for the police to take action. She went to Berry's home herself, searching for any clues about what might have happened to her sister. What she found there sent chills down her spine. There was a rope sitting in a bathtub, an item that seemed completely out of place. The scene felt wrong, staged, like someone had tried to clean up but hadn't quite managed to erase all the evidence. On August 24, 2022, Crystal's mother, Wanda Sumster, filed an official missing person report with the Aiken County Sheriff's Office. She made sure to mention the history of violence in the relationship, hoping that this context would prompt immediate action. But here's where the story takes a frustrating turn, because the initial police response was dismissive at best, negligent at worst.
Some people did not want to give me the media coverage.
Officers suggested that Crystal was probably out partying, a statement that reveals deep biases about missing Black women and domestic violence victims. They didn't treat this as the urgent situation it clearly was, and didn't immediately search for evidence or question Berry with the seriousness the case demanded. This dismissive attitude had consequences that would mess up the investigation.
Crystal's face as a missing Black woman was not even put on any type of TV stations, any type of nothing until weeks and weeks later.
The lack of immediate media coverage meant that fewer people were looking for Crystal in those critical first days when she might have still been alive.
It wasn't until I did the story with Haley that people started coming back and reaching out to me and wanting to do the coverage.
It took a social media advocate and a local reporter to finally get Crystal's face in front of the public weeks after she had disappeared. While police were slow to act, investigators were quietly building a case that would eventually lead to Berry's arrest. They started pulling together evidence. Cell phone records became crucial, showing that Berry's phone pinged off towers near the location where his car was burned in Newberry County. This placed him at the scene during the time the vehicle was being destroyed, contradicting any claims he might make about not being involved. But the evidence went deeper than just location data. Investigators discovered that Berry had made a series of purchases in the days around Crystal's disappearance that suggested he had been planning something sinister. He bought a gas-powered auger, a shovel, pre-mixed fuel, plastic coveralls, gloves, trash bags, and plastic rolls. These weren't random items for a home improvement project. They were tools specifically suited for digging and disposing of a body, for protecting yourself from leaving forensic evidence and concealing what you'd done. The most damning evidence came from Berry's own internet search. In the period around Crystal's disappearance, he had searched online for phrases like how to carry out this crime and leave no evidence, and how to commit a murder and get away with it. With all of this evidence, it wasn't until September 28, 2022, more than a month after Crystal disappeared, that Tony Berry was finally arrested at a hotel in Lexington County following a tip. He was charged with kidnapping and held without bond. But even with Berry behind bars, the nightmare for Crystal's family was far from over. The case took another disturbing turn when investigators arrested Berry's son, Darius, who was 23 years old at the time. Darius was charged as an accessory after the fact to murder and arson, accused of helping his father burn the car that contained evidence of what had happened to Crystal.
Darius is the key to this case. He needs to be facing a severe punishment, not a slap.
Reports show he picked his father up from a Love's truck stop just miles from where Tony's car was burned.
The timeline and evidence suggested that Darius had picked up his father from near the burn site, helping him escape from the scene where he destroyed crucial evidence. What happened next exposed serious flaws in how different law enforcement jurisdictions communicate with each other. Darius was initially held by Aiken County on accessory charges, but on December 19, 2022, those charges were dismissed because Aiken County realized they didn't have jurisdiction over crimes committed in Newberry County. The problem was that Newberry County had its own warrant for Darius, but it wasn't in the system yet when Aiken County checked.
If another agency is charging him, wouldn't there be some sort of handoff instead of letting him go free?
That's exactly what should have happened. But it didn't, because Darius walked free for over a week before Newberry County could execute its warrant.
I believe that had they tackled everything and communicated with the other county at the very beginning, there's a possibility that we probably would have already found Crystal.
On December 13, 2022, nearly 4 months after Crystal disappeared, Tony Berry was formally charged with murder. This was a significant step, but it came with a harsh reality for Crystal's family. Without a body, prosecuting this case would be incredibly difficult, though not impossible. The evidence was entirely circumstantial, built on witness statements, digital records, suspicious purchases, and Berry's own incriminating internet searches. The Aiken County Sheriff's Office conducted multiple searches with cadaver dogs in Newberry County, focusing on wooded areas where Berry's cell phone had pinged. Despite these efforts, Crystal's remains have never been found. On Mother's Day in May 2023, family members were informed that DNA had been found in the trunk of Berry's car. Testing was supposed to be ongoing to determine if it matched Crystal's DNA profile. The family provided DNA samples, first from Shadira and then from their mother, to help with identification if remains were ever found. But here's the frustrating part. As of late 2025, no results from that DNA testing have been shared with the family, leaving them in an agonizing state of uncertainty.
As Tony Berry faces charges for her death, her sister says time not helping.
It doesn't get easier, it gets harder, because the more and more time that goes on, you lose that faith. And that's the hardest thing, is trying to keep having faith.
But before we lose all hope in this case, there's actually a reason to believe that justice might still be possible for Crystal, even without her body ever being found. Let me tell you about a case that shares striking similarities with Crystal's story, one that took 10 years to resolve but ultimately ended with accountability. In Bardstown, Kentucky, a 35-year-old mother of 5 named Crystal Rogers vanished on July 3, 2015. Her boyfriend, Brooks Houck, was immediately suspected, but it would take 8 years for charges to be filed and a full decade before he was convicted. Crystal's car was found abandoned with a flat tire on the Bluegrass Parkway, her keys, purse, and phone still inside. And just like Crystal's case, there was evidence of staging and an attempt to make things look different from what they actually were. Brooks Houck's behavior after Crystal's disappearance mirrored Tony Berry's in disturbing ways. He gave inconsistent statements about where Crystal had been that last night, claiming she went out with friends when phone records proved otherwise. Cell phone data placed him in suspicious locations, and most damningly, a former coworker testified that Houck had said no one would ever find Crystal's body. The case relied entirely on circumstantial evidence. Bloodhounds tracked Crystal's scent to Houck's family farm, where his employee, Stephen Lawson, testified that Houck had instructed him to move Crystal's car after the incident. Phone data showed unusual late-night activity, and just like Tony Berry, Houck had searched online for how to get away with murder. The FBI got involved in 2021 and executed over 50 warrants, interviewing hundreds of witnesses. The investigation was painstaking and slow, but it was thorough. And in September 2023, more than 8 years after Crystal disappeared, Brooks Houck was finally arrested and charged with murder. His employee, Joseph Lawson, was charged as an accessory for helping move the car, just like Darius Berry was charged for helping burn Tony's vehicle. The trial happened in June 2025, with over 20 witnesses testifying over 9 days. Prosecutors presented their circumstantial case, emphasizing Houck's suspicious behavior, his changing alibis, and the testimony of people who said he'd essentially confessed to making sure Crystal would never be found. The defense argued that without a body, you couldn't prove Crystal was even dead, let alone that Houck had killed her. But here's what gives hope for Crystal's case. On July 8, 2025, the jury convicted Brooks Houck of first-degree murder. They found that the circumstantial evidence was strong enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he had killed Crystal Rogers, even though her body had never been recovered. Joseph Lawson was also convicted of conspiracy and tampering with evidence. In September 2025, Houck was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Cases like this are called no-body prosecutions, and they're becoming increasingly successful across the United States. Since 2012, there have been more than 660 no-body murder prosecutions in this country, with an 86% conviction rate. That's actually higher than the conviction rate for many cases where bodies are found, and the reason is that when prosecutors decide to move forward without remains, they've usually built an incredibly strong circumstantial case that addresses every possible alternative explanation. The evidence in Crystal's case appears to follow this same pattern. Witnesses saw Tony Berry force her into his trunk. His car was found burned. The suspicious purchases of tools for digging and disposal, online searches for how to murder without leaving evidence, cell phone records place him at the burn site, and DNA was found in his trunk. This is exactly the type of comprehensive circumstantial case that has successfully convicted defendants in no-body murders across the country. Crystal Rogers' family waited 10 agonizing years for justice, but they got it. And her mother, Sherry Ballard, said after the conviction that it was bittersweet without Crystal's body, but justice was still a meaningful step forward. The family had organized searches, held vigils, kept media attention on the case, and never stopped pushing for accountability. Sound familiar, right? That's exactly what Shadira Smothers is doing for her sister, Crystal. The passage of time has been cruel to Crystal's family in ways that go beyond just waiting for justice. Her 4 children, who should be growing up together under the mother's care, are now separated and living in different homes with their various fathers.
Unwanted separation from Crystal's 4 children, now being raised in separate homes by their fathers.
The biggest thing is having them separated. Serenity misses them. She wants to see them all the time. She tells me all the time how she misses her sister, because sisters have a bond just like me and Crystal, and they're not too far apart in age.
The youngest child, 7-year-old Serenity, has suffered a tragic loss.
She's both her parents. As sad as it is, but she misses my sister as well as Tony.
Shadira Smothers has taken in Serenity and become one of the most vocal advocates for her sister's case. She maintains contact between the separated siblings through video calls, trying to preserve their relationships despite the physical distance.
Whatever sentencing they get, it still doesn't make the pain go away. To me, there's no complete justice. It's never going to bring Crystal back.
The family has held vigils every year since Crystal's disappearance. Each year, the family gathers at Drew Park to release balloons, light candles, and share memories of Crystal. These vigils serve multiple purposes. They keep Crystal's name in the public consciousness, provide the family with a space to grieve collectively, and send a message to investigators and prosecutors that this case cannot be forgotten or set aside, just like Crystal Rogers' family did for 10 years before seeing justice served.
And I hear stories of people who 19 years they haven't found their family members, 10 years they haven't found their family members. You don't want that to be your story. And that's my biggest fear. I don't want to be sitting here 10 years from now talking to you and we still have not found Crystal. I don't want a story to end like that.
Shadira has channeled her grief and frustration into advocacy work that extends beyond just her sister's case. In October 2024, she spoke at John Jay College about missing women of color, highlighting the systemic biases that affect how these cases are handled by law enforcement and covered by the media. She's in the process of launching the Abused and Bruised the Crystal Anderson Foundation, which will provide support and resources to other victims of domestic violence. Private investigator Chandra Cleveland has also been involved in the case, offering guidance to the family while respecting the ongoing police investigation. Cleveland has advised the family against conducting their own physical searches, warning that well-meaning efforts could accidentally contaminate potential evidence that might be crucial for prosecution. This advice mirrors what happened in the Crystal Rogers case, where the FBI's methodical approach over years ultimately built the strong circumstantial case that led to a conviction. As of January 2026, Tony Berry remains in jail without bond, awaiting trial for kidnapping and murder, and Darius Berry was eventually released on a $20,000 bond for his accessory charges. The family believes Darius holds crucial information about where Crystal's body might be located. His cooperation could be the key to finally bringing Crystal home and providing her family with the closure they desperately need. In the Crystal Rogers case, Joseph Lawson's testimony against Brooks Houck was crucial to the conviction. Sometimes accessories decide that protecting themselves matters more than protecting the person who involved them in a murder cover-up. What do you think about this case? Let me know in the comments section. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.